So David, I think one of the stars of the show this weekend at the LAA Rally, your beautiful Mew Gull replica. I'm aware there's another Mew Gull, so the question that comes to my mind first is, why have you done this?
Because the existing Mew Gull XF is very much a modified, evolved aircraft, and there's a lot of myth around it. And I wanted to create a Mew Gull as Percival created them when they left the factory.
Okay, so your aeroplane's pretty much as Percival would have originally built the aeroplane.
Yes, that's right. It took a lot of research and unpicking of XF to find out what was original.
Okay, so did you have access to the plans to be able to build this?
I was very lucky in that Tom Story, when he recovered XF, got his draftsman to do a very detailed set of drawings of the aircraft as it was. That allowed him to rebuild XF and subsequent people to evolve it back to the Cape configuration, and for me to have the basic air structural drawings to satisfy LAA that it was a safe aircraft.
Okay, so basically you've gone back to the original. What is it like to fly?
To fly, it's a mixture of terror and delight. Takeoff is very fast. It climbs amazingly. In flight, it's very stable. It's very fast. Forward visibility is marginal. And landings are for the adrenaline junkie, and they're terrifying.
Because of the visibility?
It's the speed and the visibility, and also the landing attitude is not the stalled attitude, so you're actually flying it in, so it comes onto the ground very, very fast, and if you're not careful, it's back into the air again.
Fantastic. So we're here at the LAA. Has the LAA played a role in helping you get this aeroplane in the air?
Oh yes, without the LAA it wouldn't have been possible. Francis and the engineering support has been great. They advised and helped where I had questions on what modifications or demodifications of XF would be allowable, what particular version of aircraft I could build, and then all the way through the test flying, and help particularly in the test flying stages because of the speed limitations. It's outside of the normal LAA limits.
So I understand it flew for the first time last year and you got the permit fairly recently?
Yes, it flew August last year. Flew out of the strip where I assembled it. We chose a day when the farmer had cut the crops on all the fields all the way around, so we had an emergency landing ground if need be. Charlie Hute flew it down to Henlow, and we based it at Henlow. Well, I based it at Henlow for 8 months whilst I did all the shakedown and sorted it all out, and got used to flying it with their nice big 1 kilometre long runways.
David's going to explain to us now the controls of the Mew Gull and how he flies it and how he went and built it. David, I can just ask you a couple of questions first. When did you start building this aeroplane and how long did it take you?
I started building this about 7 years ago, and it took me 6 years to build it with help from other people. So it's quite a major project, about 10,000 hours.
Well, thank you very much, David, for telling us all about the instruments and how the aeroplane works, it were. At the moment you fly also a tipsy Belfair. From that to this must have been quite a challenge. How did you learn and how did you get on with your flying ability?
Yes, it was quite a challenge. The Belfair is very sensitive in pitch, just like this, so they're very similar pitch-wise, so I was used to that. For speed, I had a Taylor Titch for a year, and I got used to flying something a bit more frisky. Prior to that, I did a check flight in an extra. The other problem you have is de Havilland props don't have grease seals, so as soon as you take off, you get grease on the windscreen. So not only can you not see, you've also got a windscreen which gets covered in grease. And as soon as the grease stops, you know it's time to re-grease the prop.
Well, it's a fabulous aeroplane. Thank you very much for making the aeroplane, bringing it along, and I hope you have many hours of fantastic flying, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Oh, thank you very much. I've built it so people can see, and to also show people what was achievable in the 1930s.
Well, further to meeting David Beale earlier, I'm now with Charlie Hook, who is a test pilot for the Mew Gull. Charlie, thanks for coming down to Rally and talk to us today.
Not at all.
What did actually involve when you came to test fly the aeroplane?
What we had to do was the standard LAA test process for a new aircraft, which is the extended flight test sheet that Francis and the engineering team issue, which is 5 hours of testing and 15 landings, and that's the minimum, and that's what every new build aircraft will get. With this aircraft, because it's at the top end of the LAA tree, we approached it with slightly more caution, but that's the basic requirement. What we did though do is work up through various phases. So initially you want to get confidence in the engine and the systems, and indeed find out the basic speeds, and from that point onwards you move on to expanding the envelope, so pushing the speed up and investigating the other end, the stall, and then repeat that at various different centre of gravity positions and so forth. And then once you've done that, you can look at the performance of the aircraft and start taking data, climb figures, etc., etc. But initially it's getting confidence in the machine before we move on to recording the data. It's standard for any aeroplane. The paperwork that we completed for this machine was the same as you would do for a Pete and Paul, a Cub or any LAA aircraft. So it's getting confidence in the airframe initially and then expanding the envelope as I've just described. So the process is identical. Certainly for the initial flight, I tend to do all of those solo. No option in this machine, but a two-seat aircraft, I would do it solo because there is a slightly enhanced risk and there's no point exposing everybody to that. Equally, generally, if you have a two-seat airplane with two people in, it's getting towards its max all-up weight, and I like to fly the aircraft initially at a lesser weight. Sure. But having done the first couple of flights and we're beginning to expand the envelope, we need to look at the higher weights anyway. So at that point I would expect to get the owner on board for twofold. One, to let him see what his aircraft looks like and see how it performs, and secondly to push the all-up weight up so that we can explore rates of climb that have to be done at max all-up weight, etc. Sure. In the 1930s, this machine was something else. It was faster than the frontline fighters. So yes, the guys that were flying this really were at the edge of the technology then. When we came to fly it, as you said, it worked off the drawing board. It worked perfectly well. And everything was as expected because, of course, we had the luxury of being able to still speak to people who've flown the other Mew Gull at Old Warden. But I must admit, the one thing that surprised me was the lightness of the elevator, which had been mentioned in all of the pre-war flight tests, and people had flown it, I'd spoken to them. But even so, it's very, very easy to get in a pilot-induced oscillation with this because the elevator is so light. The performance is as expected, to be fair, so we knew what we were coming for, but yes, it's much, much better than most LA aircraft. It will climb very, very well, and it's a very clean airframe, and if you're inattentive, the speed builds up very, very quickly. And we've had this up to 265 miles an hour, so it is a quick aeroplane.
Yeah, terrific. So you must have a great appreciation for the chaps who went all the way to South Africa back in the 30s with this now.
Appreciation's one word, idiot's the other, to be fair. I wouldn't wish to land this at night between two bonfires, but I'm respective of doing so, yes.